Are you aware of how coming into contact with stupid people can harm you? Have you ever wondered why some people seem stuck in a vicious cycle of negativity, misunderstanding, and conflict? And how does this drag you too into a vortex of discomfort and frustration? In this video, thanks to a Zen story, we will see how stupid people always say the same sentences. And we will see how these phrases, repeated like a mantra, denote a closed mentality and resistant to change. Through the words of the wise master Danjuro, we will explore the concept of stupidity, not as an insult, but as an obstacle to spiritual growth. And we will find out how to recognize the phrases that stupid people constantly repeat. Phrases that betray a hypertrophied ego, a lack of empathy, and a distorted vision of reality. But we won't stop here. We will also learn how to approach these people with compassion and wisdom, protecting our inner peace and offering them the opportunity to change. So, stay until the end of the video because you will discover how to free yourself from the negative influence of stupid people, how to cultivate your spiritual growth, and how to contribute to a more compassionate and enlightened world. But before continuing, if you haven't already done so, subscribe to the channel and activate notifications so that you are informed when we publish new content for your spiritual growth. The autumn wind blew through the leaves of the maples, painting the landscape in warm golden hues. The sun was setting behind the mountains, casting long shadows over the Tofukuji Zen monastery, where the elderly master Danjuro was about to begin his evening class. The disciples, wrapped in their saffron robes, had gathered in the main hall, a vast space lit by candles and decorated with Buddhist tapestries. The air was filled with incense and a sense of profound peace, and those present knew that they would once again hear some very profound teachings. Danjuro, with his long white beard and eyes shining with wisdom, sat on his meditation cushion. His face was serene, but his voice rang out forcefully when he began to speak. "My dear disciples," he said, "today we will talk about a delicate but important topic for our spiritual path: stupid people." A murmur of surprise went through the room. It was rare for the maestro to address such a direct and apparently negative topic. Danjuro smiled, sensing their doubts. "Don't get me wrong," he continued. "I don't mean to offend anyone, but it is crucial to understand that stupidity, like ignorance, is an obstacle to our spiritual growth. And like any obstacle, we must learn to recognize it and overcome it." "But Master," asked one of the disciples, "what do we mean by stupid people?" Danjuro stroked his beard, thinking for a moment. "Stupidity," he replied, "is not simply a lack of intelligence. It is a mental attitude, a way of seeing the world that prevents us from understanding the true nature of things. Stupid people are those who cling to their opinions and refuse to listen to others. They are those who allow themselves to be dominated by negative emotions, who are not capable of putting themselves in other people's shoes. And again, they are the ones who don't have the slightest intention of changing their way of seeing things. But how can we recognize them?" asked another disciple, eager to protect his mental well-being from these people. "Stupid people," Danjuro explained, "always say some specific phrases. So, by listening to them speak, you can easily spot them. 'I am always right' is one of the most frequently repeated phrases," the monk said. "This sentence reveals a hypertrophied ego, an inability to question oneself and accept points of view other than one's own," he continued. "Whoever pronounces it believes he is infallible, superior to others, and this makes him blind to his own mistakes and learning opportunities. The truth is that no one is always right, and open-mindedness is essential for personal and spiritual growth. Humility, on the other hand, is the virtue that allows us to recognize our limits and learn from others, enriching ourselves with new perspectives and knowledge. For example, think of a farmer who persists in planting rice in barren land, convinced that his method is the only correct one. despite repeated failures. A wise farmer, on the other hand, would know how to adapt to soil conditions, experimenting with new crops and techniques, and learning from his own mistakes. While the disciples listened with great interest, the master introduced the second phrase he would speak: "I don't care what you think." This phrase denotes a total closure to dialogue, a refusal to consider the opinions and feelings of others. He continued, "Whoever pronounces that isolates himself in a bubble of selfishness, incapable of empathy and understanding." Listening is a fundamental pillar of communication and human relationships, and those who refuse it condemn themselves to loneliness and misunderstanding. Empathy, on the other hand, allows us to enter into harmony with others, to understand their emotions, and to build bridges of authentic communication. Imagine a samurai who refuses to listen to his master's advice, convinced that he is already the best. A true samurai, however, would know that there is always something to learn, and that humility is the key to improving one's skills. "I'll never change my mind" is another phrase that lets you spot the stupid. This phrase expresses mental rigidity, a stubborn attachment to one's beliefs, even in the face of contrary evidence. Those who pronounce it fossilize themselves in a single perspective, giving up the possibility of evolving and broadening their vision of the world. "You must remember," added the monk, "that change is the very essence of life, and those who reject it condemn themselves to stagnation and immobility." Flexibility, on the contrary, allows us to adapt to circumstances, to welcome new ideas, and to grow through experience. Think of an artist who refuses to experiment with new techniques, convinced that his style is perfect. A true artist, however, would know that evolution is necessary to best express one's creativity. The disciples nodded, showing their mentor that they were in full agreement with what he was explaining. Danjuro continued his lesson with another phrase to watch out for: "Others are always to blame." This sentence reveals an inability to assume one's responsibilities, a tendency to place the consequences of one's actions on others. He said, looking into the eyes of the disciples, "Those who pronounce it feel like a victim of circumstances, incapable of recognizing their role in the creation of their reality." Self-criticism and responsibility are fundamental for personal growth and for building healthy and balanced relationships. Responsibility also makes us aware of the power we have to influence our lives and contribute to the well-being of others. Let's take the example of a merchant who blames his competitors for his poor earnings. A wise merchant, on the other hand, would know how to analyze his own sales strategies, trying to improve them and adapt to the needs of the market. "The world is unjust" is the next sentence I would like you to think about, the monk continued. This sentence expresses a sense of victimhood and resignation, a pessimistic vision of reality. Those who pronounce it feel helpless in the face of life's challenges, incapable of finding solutions and creating opportunities. Life is made up of ups and downs, joys and sorrows, and the ability to face adversity with courage and determination is what makes us strong and resilient. Optimism, on the other hand, allows us to see the glass half full, to find the positive side in every situation, and to believe in our ability to overcome difficulties. Imagine a poet who complains about a lack of inspiration, convinced that the world is against him. A true poet, on the other hand, would be able to find beauty even in small things, transforming difficulties into a source of inspiration. Remember, dear disciples, that these phrases are like warning signs. They indicate to us that we are interacting with someone who is stuck in his ego, who is not open to spiritual growth. The disciples continued to listen with extreme attention, nodding in agreement. They had all met people who said those phrases, and now they understood how important it was to recognize them and protect themselves from their negative influence. "Master," a young disciple asked, "what can we do when we meet these people?" Danjuro smiled benevolently. "The first thing to do," he replied, is not to judge them. Remember that stupidity is a form of suffering. These people are trapped in a distorted view of reality, and this makes them unhappy. We must have compassion for them, he continued, but at the same time, we must protect our own inner peace. We must not get involved in their useless discussions, their complaints, their accusations. We must keep our mind calm and serene, like the water of a lake reflecting the sky. The disciples listened in silence, meditating on the Master's words. His wisdom enlightened them, guided them towards a deeper understanding of human nature and the spiritual path. But Master, another disciple asked, shouldn't we try to help these people change? Danjuro nodded. Of course, he replied, but we must do it with wisdom and compassion. We must not try to impose our ideas, but we must offer them our friendship, our support, our presence. We must be like a lighthouse in the night, pointing the way to freedom and happiness. The disciples reflected on the Master's words. They understood that stupidity was not an inevitable fate, but a condition that could be overcome through spiritual growth. Danjuro continued his lesson, explaining how meditation, the study of sutras, the practice of kindness and compassion could help us free ourselves from stupidity and realize our full human potential. His voice was like a melody that calmed the mind and opened the heart. The disciples felt inspired, motivated to continue their spiritual journey with renewed commitment. In the following days, the disciples meditated for a long time on the words of the Master Danjuro. And one day, while they were walking in the monastery garden, one of the disciples, named Taro, turned to the Master. Master Danjuro, I have thought a lot about your words about stupid people. I understood the importance of not judging them, of having compassion for them, and of protecting our inner peace. But I wonder, how can we help these people change? How can we make them understand that stupidity is an obstacle to their happiness? Danjuro smiled and replied, Taro, your question is very important. Helping others overcome stupidity is an act of great compassion, but we must do it wisely and patiently. We cannot force anyone to change, but we can offer them our presence, our example, and our guidance.